Hi, guys. Thank you so much for joining me today for episode 11 of season 3 of Chatting with Creators. I'm so excited to be in this new media lab with you guys and diving into Disney's Rosaline with Lace and Ian talking about their amazing score. With this episode, you will see and hear a few technical issues on my side where I accidentally recorded to the cloud instead of my local computer, making the image and the sound a little bit grainy. However, I think you will still find that this podcast is full of amazing content as we dive into the nitty gritty of the technology and the techniques that the composers use in this score. Let's get into it. Hi.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good, thank you. Sorry it's so dark in here. We're in our little cave. And it's
That's okay.
not sunny in LA today, so we don't have any of our natural light.
Yeah,
Not sunny in LA.
no.
I know.
Fancy. Well, it's also not sunny here on the East Coast, so I'm not used to us both having non-sunny days. My older sister actually lives in LA, so she's always bragging about how she has better weather than me.
Yeah, I mean it's better weather until then you have like 118-degree weather for a week, and then you're like, that's not very nice.
At least we can all agree that it's better than Arizona weather.
Sure. Yeah, let's all agree on that.
All right. Well, any questions before we get started?
I don't think
I
so.
think we're good.
Awesome. Well, thank you and happy premiere day.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. We're very excited about all that we've been seeing people post online, and just the excitement overall has been really great to see.
Mm-hmm. It was funny. Somebody texted me this morning and they're like, "Have you seen Rosaline yet?" And I'm like, "Yes, I have, but I can't talk about when I saw it because they texted me at 5 a.m. and they're like, "Have you seen it yet?" I'm like, "Yeah, you know I wake up at 6 a.m. So this feels like a trick question."
Yeah. Amazing.
Well, for anyone who might be living under a rock for the past 14 hours, would you please introduce yourselves and Rosaline to the audience?
Yeah, my name is Sophia. I'm a composer that works under the name Drum and Lace, and I'm one of the composers of Rosaline.
My name is Ian Hultquist, and I am the other composer of Rosaline, which is the new film out on Hulu, directed by Karen Main, starring Caitlin Dever.
And Disney Plus worldwide.
And Disney Plus in Europe.
Mm-hmm.
Worldwide, I think.
Worldwide.
Yeah. Flashback to when this project was first brought to you. What were your thoughts when you heard Romeo and Juliet was being retold yet again? What were your thoughts on this new perspective?
I think we both really enjoyed reading the script for it. It just felt like such a fun, fresh take, and just so fascinating too that this character Rosaline has existed in text for so long, but as far as we know, has never really gotten like a full bodied personality, has never really been given a real voice before, and just thought that it was like such a great idea to run with.
Yeah, and also just the way that that Rosaline's character is portrayed, being so ahead of her time, and just such a revolutionary, for the time period, and just kind of like in thought and everything. So we were really excited.
Yeah, absolutely. It took me back to, 9 years ago. Holy shit. 9 years ago when I was a freshman in high school and we were doing Romeo and Juliet. And we had a day where we all tried to do a different Rosaline. Like, is she 100% that bitch? Is she sheepish? Like, who is she? Because we had like the least context with her. So that meant we had the most options. Mm-hmm. And I really love the options that they picked here. I think it was better than what us 14-year-olds came up with.
Amazing.
So something I thought was interesting when I was going over the email I got from your publicist over at White Bear PR was the description of this music being Baroque pop. Do you think that musicologists, going back to music school days, do you think musicologists or music professors would agree with the style / genre being Baroque pop?
Well, we actually think Renaissance pop has a better ring to it.
I like that too. That sounds a lot cooler.
Yeah, right. I don't know. I mean, I think that it's an easy way for us to describe, sort of give an idea of the instrumentation, but then also the intention of how the harmony and melody were used, because we're definitely using some period instruments, like Renaissance instruments, but then we're using it in an idiom that's very contemporary, like they wouldn't have been writing in with this type of harmonic content back with these instruments. So it's definitely like something different. And I think that especially to describe to like a younger audience that's not musically inclined, I think this is the best way we came up with.
I think, I don't know, they might fight us on it if they're like really sticklers, but I think they might agree with it. I think it's as close as we could get to like having it be like a Renaissance pop score while also still serving the film the right way.
Yeah.
I honestly one of the reasons I like the way Renaissance pop sounds so much is I really hate how in Bridgerton they call everything a classical arrangement. And like, there's nothing classical about this. You just gave it to a string quartet.
Yeah.
This is definitely, there's a lot of similarities, I think, especially when we were doing the covers and whatnot, but it is also a level of production just because of like also adding some contemporary instruments, it's a mix, whereas I feel like that's more, as you're saying, just like a string quartet playing stuff, but it's very much kind of in line with what's been happening, the anachronistic music, like the contrast of like the time period with the modern music.
That was a perfect segue into another one of the questions that I had prepared. With this film being so full of cover songs, what was your favorite song to cover?
I mean,
they were all good, honestly.
The biggest chuckles were definitely for the All By Myself. I mean, it's just like it's pure, once the drums hit and you're just like, oh my God, we're in like schmaltzy land. It's just like, imagining, the only thing that would make it better is if like Celine Dion came in and like sang over it. It would just be so epic.
I don't know. I love your voice on there.
Oh, well, thank you.
I think the most nerve-wracking might have been Dancing on My Own, just because we're gigantic Robin fans and we're scared of a disservice.
I mean, I really like how the Escape cover turned out.
I think Escape is great. That turned out really well.
It lends itself so well to a lute instead of a guitar, and it just works. Really
I agree with you. So, like, I loved the way the lute sounds in that one. And actually, when Escape came on, I immediately hit the Google and I'm like, do full covers of these songs like exist, like full length covers, or did you guys really only do like that one or two cues?
For Robin and the Enrique Iglesias, we did full on song covers that are on the soundtrack.
Yeah, so it's like 3 to 4 minute songs. Just because we didn't know, we wanted to have the option for the production and the music editors to be able to like cut in more if they needed to, and like the scenes changed throughout us working on it, so we just figured that doing a fuller a couple choruses and a couple verses, and also it was more fun for us, so
yeah.
No, I love that, and I especially love that I can see that you guys are like actually fans of this music. It's so much fun. As you mentioned, like the scenes change pretty quickly. How did you approach this unique blend of synthetic and acoustic and period instruments in your score? How were those kinds of choices made?
Yeah, I don't know if there was necessarily like a clear like decision when we were writing, like, oh, this needs to be synth, it needs to be that. We just kind of we actually worked on the songs before we started doing the score. We did those 2 cover songs like really early on as they were still filming, because they wanted those arrangements to portray on screen. So that kind of already gave us the palette of Renaissance instruments we were going to use. And then when we started with our score, I think we just started bringing in synths kind of like as needed. We write with synths a lot in the music that we do. So I think we would just kind of be like, well, we can cover as much ground here as we can with like a string quintet, but we could also then like kind of go into new territory if we bring the synth pad in or something like that. I feel like it happened kind of organically, and then maybe we would go back and embellish things here and there just to kind of make it feel a bit more lively.
Yeah, the synths help to kind of like interject a little bit of energy, I think, and invigorate the score a bit, because the period instruments, for sure, a lot of them don't have much sustain, so it's very plucky, whereas I think that the synths and the strings really help to kind of like flesh out and add more texture overall.
Mm-hmm.
Very nice. And going a little bit into our deep dive into that for our music majors out there, myself included, what is your DAW of choice? And if I were to look at a project right now, how organized would it look?
So I can say it's very organized. That's one of the things we pride ourselves in
Well,
organization.
beginning of a project or end of a project?
Well, but still, I feel like we do a very good job of keeping, like, we bounce stems within our project. Like we try to keep things as clear as possible. So hopefully it would seem really clear to anyone else. But
yeah, we both use Cubase as our main DAW. And yeah, we do try and be as organized as we can. It really helps us to, like, especially when you're 3 months into a project and like have to pull up a cue from 3 months earlier,
yeah,
to try and make sure that it's all uniform. But
Yeah.
once you get to the end of a project, it's just kind of like anything goes at some point.
we use this program called Video Sync that hosts our video, that hosts, the reels or the film. And that makes it a lot easier to be organized within the Cubase session, just because we're not having to drag video in or
Yeah.
deal with that. And then, we do also use Ableton for like sound generation, just like if we're doing a session of sounds, we'll sometimes do that. And then we always end up using Pro Tools when we're sending, mock-ups, or if we do have to bounce video, or if we're working with the music editors and have to make like a quick audio edit. Often it'll be in Pro Tools too.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, y'all got it right in there. My last film, I personally use Logic because that's what my main school used in undergrad. And my last project, I thought I was done, and I had 38 instruments on there, and then it crashed and said, "You have overloaded the system." And then I realized it's because I hadn't bounced anything.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Yeah. Most people we know use Logic. We're one of the few that use Cubase, I feel like, but we're just so used to it.
Yeah. Yeah. We've found that Cubase works for us. So yeah.
Hashtag not a sponsor.
No.
Yet.
Yeah.
I know Cubase has been sponsoring more and more composers, so
yeah.
Never know.
We're here, Steinberg. Call us up.
Well, kind of along those same lines, if East West or Spitfire or any of those guys hit you up and said they wanted to release a Rosaline digital instrument lab, what would you guys have on it?
That's fine. I mean, like, we use a lot of Spitfire, and actually, like,
mock-up,
we use a ton of it when we were writing the score. We use a lot of Abbey Road 2, like pizzicato strings, to write all those parts.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and we used the new string library because it had didn't we? It was
Abbey Road 2?
No, I think we used something else. I can't remember the name of it, but it was like a new string library, or maybe it was a Pastinato strings. I don't know.
Oh,
but,
yeah. I mean, I would say maybe Sophia's voice, because that's one of the, I don't know, it's a very unique tone that we've used in a lot of scores when we write together, and she uses in her own music. And
yeah,
I think it'd be cool to have a virtual Sophie.
Yeah.
the Sophie AI here to improve all your vocal scores.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. Yeah. That's not bad.
We're hitting up Spitfire. We're going to put it in the store.
Yeah.
The next $300 lab session.
Yeah, a good lute would be nice to have.
Good lute. Those are hard to find.
Yeah, or like a prepared harpsichord.
Ooh.
Yeah.
How do you guys like to do prepared harpsichord? What do you prepare it with?
Well, we didn't get to do that just because we used soft synth, obviously, for the mock-up, and then we had a live player perform, because those instruments are very delicate, and they're expensive, and I wish we could afford to just have a harpsichord around, but we do not.
Next film will
But if you got to, what would you prepare it with?
Probably play around.
Just
I don't know, do experimentation. Try some like ping pong balls,
rubber bands, maybe some crayons, just thrown in there.
Belt harpsichord, that'd be weird.
Yeah. Who knows?
Oh yeah, that would be so much fun. There was this old program at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln from a while back where some of the engineers were like rebuilding harpsichords, like they were building them as an engineering project. So maybe like we can find an old school out there that like did a similar project and has like these old engineering major created harpsichords, and you guys could experiment with that so that the music historians don't like
Yeah,
perish.
that's really cool, actually, to get an engineering student to build instruments.
Good idea.
Very cool.
I don't know what else they're doing that's worthwhile.
Yeah.
You know? Before they all destroy me in the comment section, that was a joke.
Yeah.
Okay, so back to Rosaline. What cue took you guys the most tries to get?
I think the croquet scene.
Yeah, the croquet scene for sure.
Ooh.
It was tricky to find the right balance of comedy without being too dark, while still kind of having energy and not getting like too away from where we need to be.
Yeah, and not stepping on dialogue and allowing for the delivery of the actors to land.
Yeah. So it's a very simple musical cue, but it took a handful of tries to really try and make it right.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing I hear a lot of composers talk about on this show, and I've experienced myself personally doing films, is that comedy always seems to be the hardest thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing I just was struck by right away with this music was, even when it felt really metered, like I could just conduct it after listening to it one time, was it all the comedic timing still felt like it was just right. Those flutes hitting on just the right moment. What is your guys' approach to meeting that comedic timing?
I mean, honestly, I think for a lot of the comedy cues, we may have just written something, to click and kind of like 2 bars, and then as needed, move them. Because we find that sometimes it's easier to have kind of like a consistent piece of music that then you can kind of cut, and then if you just drag and drop audio and MIDI and you're all of a sudden on the end of the 3rd beat, it's easier to do that when you've already got something rather than like starting to write from that spot.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also the scenes and the edits were changing so often that doing tempo changes would have just been more of a headache. So we often use less tempo changes and more, when we can, less tempo changes and just more of dragging within the timeline, I think.
Yeah, I think we're both really good about watching a scene and figuring out the rhythm of it quickly. And then we try not to like overdo it with tempo changes and all that stuff. Just, we like to keep it simple.
Yeah, because the moment if you accidentally delete something, then everything is off and it just becomes a...
Yeah, well, I've seen some composer sessions where their tempo track is like this, and it's like, how do you conform that? Like, I don't want to deal with that.
Yeah, and like reverbs. I mean, there's one specific moment in the score where we when we were bouncing it out, there is a tempo change.
Oh yeah.
And there was this like really funny, like when you do a tempo change and you've got a lot of reverb on something, it ends up doing this like like revving up sort of sound, and we kind of left it in as a mistake, and they put it in the picture and they loved it. So then, when we were like, okay, we're going to send you the new version, we took that out because we were like, oh, it's a mistake. And the director, Karen Main, was actually like, wait, where's that little squiggly thing? Sometimes like the mistakes that happen from the tempo changes can be interesting sonically. It's when it's too much of a spoiler.
It's at the end of the film.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I know exactly what moment you're talking about.
They're in the
I don't
chapel.
want to get sued.
Yeah. Yeah. So it was originally not intentional, and then it became very intentional.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, originally I was gonna save this question for the end, but we just streamlined into it really quickly without giving context because Disney doesn't like spoilers.
Okay.
What is your favorite one-liner from the film? My favorite was, "You're a woman. You're not supposed to talk about what you want."
Yeah. Oh my God, that's a good one. There's a few that got cut, but
Call me when your wisdom teeth come in. It's one of my favorites.
Oh, I love that one.
Yeah, that one's great. Also, oh, I'm paraphrasing now, but there's somebody says like, and we look forward to you bringing in a bunch of strapping young men, and the character goes, excuse
Yes.
me, and they say like, oh, sons, and they go, yes, and then like, no, yes.
Mhm.
I think that's one of my favorite interactions
Yeah.
of the film.
Yes.
Spencer Stevenson, who plays Paris,
Oh
is
my God.
amazing.
I love everything
Oh,
Paris.
So funny.
Yeah, there's so
Oh,
many
gosh.
little moments. Minnie Driver, the nurse, has so many good moments.
Mhm.
Like
Oh my gosh.
get up, you lazy cow.
Yeah.
It's really
Hmm.
gonna start saying that
When
to my
you-
dogs.
Oh my gosh. The nurse was another character that I just loved seeing be given like an actual personality, because there's
Yes.
so much in the script where in the script she literally doesn't have a name. It's just nurse.
Hmm.
Yes, there used to be a whole joke about how her name is Janet, and everyone just thinks her actual name was registered Janet.
Mm.
It's really funny, and it's cool. Exactly, from like the Shakespearean scripts, these side characters are never given the humanity that they deserve. They're just like side characters.
Hmm.
And it's so cool to see the development and that they're like fully fleshed out and have stories to tell. It's great.
Oh my gosh. One thing I especially, honestly, like my favorite thing that they did with the original script was they actually did Juliet's age. Obviously, the actress doesn't look like a child, but especially with "Let me know when your wisdom teeth come in," like this is like a literal child. She's not even old enough to marry by classical standards.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's one thing I loved was, even though they don't look like children because the actors and actresses, because this is an adultier film, we're like, this is not these are children, in fact.
Yeah, the
Whereas
cast.
every other adaptation, they're like, these are definitely adults and these are rational decisions.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
All right. So we had our first Q hardness question earlier. What we said we know what Q now took you guys the longest. What Q just kind of worked on the first go or first couple goes? Like, what do you feel like was one of those things you guys got right almost right away?
I think maybe the letter writing scenes.
Yeah.
Rosaline writes a couple letters throughout the movie, and those were kind of liked universally from the first go.
Also,
I feel like
the horse escape scene
yeah
didn't really change too much from our first go at it. It was mainly just kind of like
Mhm.
cleaning up a little bit, maybe some like slight picture edits, but
yeah
that was our original idea, is pretty much what you see in the film for that scene, which for us we're proud of, because like that's one of our favorite moments of the whole movie.
yeah
Yeah, absolutely. One thing I really loved was that there's only like 2 or 3, maybe 4, like really actiony
Mhm.
moments in the film. You guys really delivered them so it felt like action. Like you easily could have delivered it so it just felt like play comedy once again, but it felt like immersive, like something's actually at stake.
Oh,
Oh,
thank you.
thank you. Yeah,
Glad you think that, because those were notes we got.
yeah, yeah, it was definitely upping the ante. I think we had a percussionist called Hal Rosenfeld that we love, and he just did such a good job with the percussion and drum set and everything. So it's that, and then the string players really
Yeah,
played great.
Those, once we got recorded, were like, they really just felt so much energy and fun and excitement.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I got one last technical question for you. What was your approach to getting the parts of your score that were live recordings?
So we worked with Catherine Joy and her amazing team at Joy Music House, who we've collaborated with a lot over the past few years. She's got a whole slew of like talented orchestrators who I think are starting to get familiar with our writing style.
Yeah.
And we were actually lucky enough to have Catherine in New York with us at the recording sessions to kind of help score produce and make sure that we're getting the performances that we want from the players.
Yeah, and we had 3 days at Power Station, which used to be Avatar Studios in New York, and we got to record strings for 1 full day and another half day, and then we had another half day of woodwinds. and then a full day of harp, lute, harpsichord, piano, and then an afternoon of drum kit and percussion. So it was, like an actually serious amount of time that we had in the studio, and everyone just was so excited and so happy. And it was in May of 2022, and I think it was one of the first times that a lot of people had gone together in the studio because of the pandemic. So I think there's just like this electricity, and everyone was just really grateful, and it was really, really fun. It was fun to be around people and feel like we had a team and all of that.
That's so much fun. All right, before we close out, what is one thing each that you guys think music fans should definitely be listening for when they watch Rosaline?
Ooh.
It's really hard to hear, so you might have to listen on headphones, but there's a big climactic moment where Rosaline is running towards the chapel at the end. We hit a dog bark in there a couple times.
Yeah.
So see if you can find
we
that.
always try to sneak our dog barking into our scores. So there's definitely that. I think it's interesting to just listen out for when the synthesized and the non-synthesized work well together. There's a cue called Mind the Fish, which I think we were able to strike a nice balance between that. It's like a mix of like one of those little Korg drum machines, like the Volca beats. It's like that, then playing with, a 14, 15 string ensemble and percussion and wooden flutes and metal flutes. I mean, there's just like a lot going on. But I think that's one of the cues that has the most action going on.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for your time and joining me on Chatting with Creators. It was amazing to hear about your unique perspectives and all the techniques that you used on this film. Congrats again on the premiere, and I hope you guys get to enjoy your weekend.
Thank you so much for having us. It was a pleasure talking to you.
Of course. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Hi guys, thank you so much for watching this episode of Chatting with Creators or listening on your favorite place to find podcasts. For more episodes, be sure to check the description below as well for links to find all of my information as well as Drum and Lace's and Ian's. Make sure that you view Rosaline on Disney Plus internationally and on Hulu in the USA. Thank you so much. Have a great rest of your week, and I'll see you next week for another episode of Chatting with Creators. Bye!